From Wacko Chaka Studio, I am Ashwin Chako, and this is The Fruitful Life, a show about the business of creativity and the stories behind the creators that have made their dreams a reality. Hey, folks, welcome to The Fruitful Life, Dapo Adeola. Hi, Dapo.
Hello, hello, hey Ash, how you doing? You all right? You good?
Good, good. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Cool. Thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking of me. Thank you. I'm
No
honored to
worries.
be here.
So, before I get cracking, this is the question I like to ask all my guests, and it is if you could be a fruit, what fruit would it be and why?
Oh my God, thoughts. This is high on the list of thoughts I've never had. Um, I am gonna say an apple
Okay.
because I like the taste of apples. Either
Yeah.
no, screw that. Let me take that back. Scratch, record, rewind. Pineapple, a pineapple
Pineapple.
because I love pineapples. I think they're
Awesome.
delicious. I think
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
delicious, and I'm pretty delicious as well. So yes, yes,
Good choice.
yes.
Good choice. So, for our guests that might not know you, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I can do, but before I do that, I'm going to ask you the question you just asked me because I feel like you deserve to be put under the spotlight as well. What fruit would you be, Ash, if you could be a fruit? What fruit would you be and why?
Probably an apple because apple a day keeps the doctor away. I like that saying. It seems to pop up almost anywhere in the world. Has a lot of
A lot of
resilience.
meaning to
Yeah.
it. Cool, cool, cool. That's a good answer. All right. So, for those who do not know me, my name is Dapo Adeola. I am a children's book author, illustrator. I also sometimes design characters and I do visual development for animation and various other projects. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
So, tell me a little bit more about you. Let's dig into your creative journey. So, when you were a kid, were you always creative, or did you draw? Did you know that illustration or even doing children's book was a possibility, or is this something that you discovered later in life?
So my journey was not linear. As a kid, I hated reading, mostly because I was forced to read for literacy purposes, not for joy, not for fun, just so I don't embarrass my caregivers, as an illiterate child. So because of that, I really hated reading. It wasn't until around 7 that my love affair with books began. I was put in front of a bookshelf by my then teacher, and I was given the option. That's a very important thing. I was given the option to choose the book that I actually really liked. And that's when my love affair with art, illustration, and everything just kicked off. I picked a few Roald Dahl books and I just got straight into them. And I discovered the artwork of Quentin Blake. At the time, it lit a fire, but I didn't know what kind of fire it lit. I just loved it. And then from then, it was like video games, cartoons. I've always loved cartoons at that point, but my love of them became more related to the artwork.
Yeah.
The art that I'm seeing on the styles that I'm seeing on screen. And then I had a best friend at the time, a guy called Levi. We were 7 years old. And what we used to do for fun is we used to draw all our favorite cartoon characters, our own versions of them, or just copy them. And then we also used to draw our favorite video game levels as well. Like Mario and Sonic had these
Nice.
very linear, stylized levels, and we used to
Yeah,
draw
yeah.
them. And Zelda as well. And that was the earliest memory that I have of falling in love with illustration, art, cartooning, all of that stuff. Um, with regards to the journey to become the illustrator that I am today, that was haphazard, serendipitous, absolutely bananas. To answer your question directly, I could not foresee any of the stuff that I'm doing right now. I always knew I wanted to draw for a living. I didn't know that what I wanted to do was actually called illustration.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reason why, it's not that I didn't know what illustration was. I knew what illustration was, but I didn't know that what I wanted to do was called illustration because I didn't feel like it could be,
Yeah.
because I just didn't see anyone that looked like me. And I'm sure you can relate to this. I didn't see
Yeah.
anyone that looked like me doing the kind of artwork I was doing. Um, so as a result, I knew I always wanted to draw. I always wanted to do art for a living. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I had no idea, but I knew I just loved drawing. It was my escape. It was my joy. It was my everything. So like I did art GCSE. I got a B, believe it or not. I didn't apply myself at GCSE level at all. I sucked at doing coursework. And I was the kid that had the talent, had the intelligence, but none of the direction or
Sure.
focus. And if you see all my report cards, that's what it says. Dapo should apply himself more. I wish he would apply himself more. It just, that was a constant. Um, so I like to, when I do these talks at schools, I tell the kids all the time that I'm an academic failure, and it is true. Like, and the reason I say that is because, my journey and my journey changed my relationship with academia and art. There's this expectation in academia that we, especially creative students, we're supposed to achieve certain levels at a certain age. And you and I would, I know you know this. I know you know this because every artist knows this. There's a certain age. Every artist past 20 knows this. You mature, your art matures as you mature. As you
Mm.
grow, it grows, your skill set grows. There's no set kind of time for you to arrive at a certain destination when it comes to art. You get there when you get there. So the
Yeah.
expectation for you to hit certain benchmarks at 18, at 16, at 18, and at like 21 when you finish uni, all those things, that doesn't work for us as creatives. And I feel like it's setting unrealistic life expectations for a lot of kids that are studying creative courses in academia, you know?
Mm.
So that's why I always start the talks by talking about how I'm an academic failure. And like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So to get into that, to get into my experiences with academia, I did GCSE level. I got my GCSEs required for me to get onto college. In college, I did business studies, graphic design, and fine art. And I quickly dropped business studies because that just was not for me at all. And the thing with me is, as a kid, I just stopped coming into stuff. I never told anyone that I'm not doing this course anymore. I just stopped showing up. So I just stopped showing up to business studies, and I'd be on the basketball court. I got in so much trouble for that, I remember. So I started doing art and design and graphic design, and I loved graphics. My teacher he had a love and hate relationship with me because I used to talk about everything
Yeah.
cool, like in the class. Like I was just talk and talk and talk, and then an hour would go by of our lesson time, and we've just spent it debating stuff that I brought up. And he hasn't gotten around to teaching the lesson. And he used to love it, but he used to hate it at the same time because he'd have to play catch up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of scraped by my first year of both courses, and I failed my second year miserably. And then because I just hate coursework. So what my
Mm.
teacher did, my graphics teacher, his name was Darren. I can't remember his last name. One day I will find him, but hopefully he's still alive. But he took my portfolio of artwork. He went to see my fine art teacher and he collected all my work together. And he took them to this room where a visiting college were coming in to recruit students for the foundation course, the access to the degree course in their establishment. So he was like, he phoned me up. He was like, Daps, show up at this room at this time. I thought I was in so much trouble. I showed up, and then my work was on the table, and there was like three people sitting across the table. And again, I just thought I was in so much trouble. So I'm sitting there and they're like, oh, your work is really good. Would you like a place on our foundation course? And I was like, oh, because at that point, I didn't know where I was going to go after college. I didn't know what I was
Mm.
going to do. I had a job, so I was just going to do more hours at my job, if anything.
Yeah.
So what happened was I ended up doing the foundation course, probably one of the greatest academic experiences I've ever had. It was a course that gave me freedom to experiment, to try different things, to try different practices in art. It covered fine art, fashion, photography, printmaking, life drawing, all these things I got to do. And I really had fun. It was just in a year. And then what happens is halfway through, I think you have to pick a specialist course, a course to specialize in. And again, I chose graphics. And the reason why I kept choosing graphics was because I felt graphics was the only thing that I could say to someone that I do. If I'm chatting up a girl, I could be like, yeah, I do graphic design. And she's not going to laugh at me. Because if I told her I'm an artist, it's going to be this expectation that I'm
Yeah.
broke, like,
Yeah.
or I'm trying to sell her a fantasy, you know? So I did graphics. I chose graphics as a specialist for the foundation course. I aced it, got onto the graphic design degree. And my second year and my first year were spent tailoring every single brief because it was graphic design and advertising, right?
Yeah.
So I would tailor every single brief to allow me to illustrate. And in our class, you know how you get like the illustrator,
Yeah.
the Photoshop guy, you get names and nicknames in the class. You get like allocated nicknames, and I was the illustrator because I would just be illustrating. Even group projects, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to draw it. Whatever it is that he needs drawing, send it here. I'll draw it. So I became that guy. And I did that for my first and second year. Third year, it was BA honors. Third year, it was time to do a dissertation. And I wrote a dissertation about how you can teach children so many different things using picture books. At the time, I had no idea that I was going to end up where I am now. So let's just put that out there. This is like 20, I think this was 2003. I think 2003. I'm giving you my age here, by the way. This is 2003. And I did my dissertation. I really enjoyed it. My end project was going to be a picture book, a retelling of The Tortoise and the Hare, but as a counting book.
Mm.
I did all that character designs, did some visuals, all that stuff, wrote the dissertation itself. And then I came into like my third dissertation tutorial, right? And I say my third because up until this point, the lecturers had insight into what I was doing, right? They knew what I was doing. So we got to the third dissertation tutorial, only for me to get told that I wasn't going to pass with an honors because my dissertation was an illustration dissertation, not a graphic design dissertation. And then I was asked a cheeky freaking question: have I considered doing an illustration degree instead of what I'm doing now? This is our third year. We have 3 months
Oh
left to
gosh.
finish the course, right? I'm in debt because I took out this student loan. I can't, we only get like one free degree, if you will. And it's not free, it's got strings attached, but we only get that. Like if I did this again, if I applied for a illustration course, I'd have to pay through my teeth for it. And I didn't have the money, and I don't come from the background where people have that kind of money. So I was crushed, if I'm going to lie, because they told me I wasn't going to graduate with honors, that I could continue the course and I'd get the BA, but it wouldn't be with honors. And I'm like, so what did I pay for,
Yeah.
I stopped coming in. My default reaction, I'm happy to say I'm more mature, so I don't handle things that way anymore. But my default was, screw this, I'm not coming in anymore. So I just stopped coming in. And then one of my lecturers, who's actually a good friend of mine now, Craig, he called me up and he was like, Daps, what's going on? Your attendance has dropped massively. I came in, I sat with him. He was my first year lecturer, so he knew me, and he also oversaw the foundation degree. And he knew me, and he was like, what's going on? I told him what happened. He apologized on behalf of the faculty members, which wasn't his job to do at all. And then he gave me one piece of really, really corny advice now that I think about it. And his corny advice was, don't stop drawing. It was just that simple, and it stuck. It absolutely stuck. He was like, your work is really good. I love your artwork. Don't stop drawing. And in times when I could have stopped, I remembered that, and it stuck with me, and I didn't stop drawing. So that was my academic experience. In terms of the road to getting hair and actually becoming an illustrator proper, after that experience, I worked retail jobs, and I would doodle here and there, do small things for friends, just like I would follow art, because at the time that was when like MySpace was kicking off, Facebook was kicking off. That was the first time around that era when I started to see people who looked like me from other parts of the world do what I do, because the internet connected us in that way, right? So like everyone was coming out of America, like all these black artists were coming out of America. They were doing things. First, it was artists whose style looked like a style that really made me, excited. And then it became artists who look like me, whose style really looked like a style. First, it was like LaShawn Thomas, like he was one of the first to come out that I saw. Then it was Conrad Kaiser. It just opened up. Like it was MySpace, and it was what was the one? DeviantArt.
Yeah,
All of
deviant art.
those, right? They just open up the world for me, man. And I
Yeah.
started to see all these styles coming through. So we got to around 2008. I was working in a gym at the time. Fitness is another passion of mine. I was working in a gym, and I really, I was good at my job. I was a salesperson. If I'm passionate about something, as you can tell, I talk a lot. I can talk about this thing till the cows come home if I'm passionate about it.
Yeah.
So I was good at it. I was doing sales, but I kind of felt like there was something missing, because I just wouldn't stop doodling. And then I was like 24, coming up to 25. I had no kids, no family, nothing like that. So I was just like, you know what? You don't have any responsibilities. If you're going to take a crack at this, now's the time. So I did. I went part-time at my reasonable job, sales, and I became a receptionist. And then I started to cobble together, thanks to the internet, I started to cobble together an education in illustration. I used all the resources I could find that I could afford. I did online courses. I just, yeah. I started working 5 days a week part-time at the, well, I say part-time, 5 days a week was what I was working at the gym. And then I whittled, over the years, I whittled my hours down to 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, and then 1 day, and then shift coverage is what I started doing. But that was with me sort of growing the art side of things, right?
Mm.
I took a huge pay cut, if I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how I survived. Like, I took a huge pay cut because I would tell my friends how much I used to get paid. And they were like, I never knew, like, because I was good, I was resourceful. And I also
Yeah.
I never used to kind of, I never used to put myself in a situation where, like, I'd be in trouble financially. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
If I can't afford the holiday, I'm not going. It's
Yeah.
just that simple. I'm not just I was that person. The most I ever spent money on was art related things, you know. Um, and another thing I did as well, which was really, which I wouldn't advocate for anyone to do. I lived in my overdraft for a decade. Like, that was awful financial decision in my 20s. I lived in my overdraft for a decade. So all of that's going on. I've gone part time. I'm cobbling together an education in illustration. Things are going from strength to strength. I started to sell my work at art fairs. The Urban Art Fair in Brixton was where I started off. And then I went from art fairs to hanging up my work in establishments such as the Ritzy Cinema in Brixton, and then holding my first solo show. I held my first solo show, well, I held my first group show in the gym that I worked in. So a
Mm.
thing that I got good at doing was creating an audience. So, like, my gym, we get like we used to get like close to 1,000 people coming in and out of that building every day, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to tap into this audience. They all know me. I asked the manager if I could use the cafe that we have after hours to hold an art show. He said yes. I made flyers, gave them all to the members, and one night they all came. I had a group art show with my work and my friends, and a few friends that did music, performed, and it was incredible. Like, the turnout was incredible. It was so good. The vibes were so great that the gym manager at the time was like, look, you can keep your work up in a display in the hallway of the gym for a couple of weeks. So I did. And that was the first time I had the gallery in the gym. And the footfall where we worked in a business park. So the footfall guaranteed exposure, right? People
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
buy the artwork and then people would hang up the artwork in their offices, right? And then people would ask them when they come in, like, oh, where'd you get that piece of work from? Like, word of mouth started to really spread. This was 2012, like, word of mouth started to really spread. And people knew that the receptionist at the gym was also the artist, right?
Mm.
So then we got to 2013 and I did the same thing again. The impact wasn't as big, but it sort of did cement me as the artist. You know, that nickname,
Yeah.
like, the artist. Like, that's what I became. And then we, over the years, 2014, I started to do a few more group shows, not ones that I organized, but ones that I participated in. And then 2015, Nathan, who is the author of the picture book Look Up, him and I, we had been friends for a while. He approached me in 2010 in my first year of just, stepping out, to do some character designs, and it didn't go anywhere. I did the work. It was fun, but it didn't take off like we both planned. But we
Yeah.
kept tabs on each other, and he's a very, very talented screenwriter, actor, multi-talented man. And in 2015, he approached me. He was like, Daps, I love your work. I want to work with you. I want you to design this character for a picture book. And thus, Rocket was born, the little girl with the orange jumpsuit.
Yeah.
She was born. And at the time, Nathan's, I had my first solo show that year as well. And that was when Nathan approached me. And the solo show was a sellout. It was incredible. Had such a good time putting that together. I started working on Rocket, started doing the designs for her, and Nathan's talent agency merged with a literacy agency. So he
Yeah.
took my artwork into the literacy arm of the agency. The lady who he took my artwork to, Sally Ann, who's now my agent, she called me in 2016 and she was like, do you want me to represent you? I think your work is amazing. I was like, oh, okay, it's going to cost me anything because that's my first thing. I'm like, I don't want to pay you for nothing if it's not
Yeah.
guaranteed. So she's like,
Yeah.
no, I get paid when you get paid. And I was
Yeah.
like, all right, cool. My only experience of an agent up until that point was like Jerry Maguire. So, like, I was really expecting her to be, Jerry Maguire, like, show me the money, like, but she never said that. She still ain't said it till today. Even though she has shown me the money, I ain't gonna lie. So,
Yeah.
she signed me up. We missed the Frankfurt Book Festival, which was in October of
Yeah.
2016. We missed that. But I got the artwork ready for us to go to the Bologna Children's Book Festival the
Hmm.
following year in 2017. And she took it out to Bologna. And at the time, we had a synopsis for a story. And then we also had a ton of my artwork. So she packaged it all together, took it out to the Bologna Children's Book Festival. And when I tell you, everything went crazy, everything went nuts. 2017, April, she got back from Bologna. She was like, oh, there's a few people interested. She liked the kind of play it safe with our expectations. And I was like,
Yeah.
how many is a few people? So she sent me a list of like 12 publishers. And I was like, I'm Nigerian. We like to be on the money with things. So I went online and I was like, top 10 publishers in the world. And they were all on that list. And that's when I knew that things were getting a little bit serious. Now,
Yeah.
people started following me on Twitter as well. And I wasn't really active on Twitter at the time. People started following me and I would like look at their bios and it would be head of editing at Bloomsbury Children's. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, something's shifting here. So this is April 2017.
Yeah.
Then in May 2017, she called. Nathan was filming a show that he was in at the time, Benidorm, and he had a break in filming. So she put together a day where we would go around meeting publishers. And I thought that we were going to be going around and having to do a hard sell to publishers and pitch ourselves to them. So I was ready for that. What I wasn't ready for was that they were going to be pitching themselves to us. So we went around, we met like 6 publishers on the day. Um, as we went through the day, each meeting got progressively bigger and bigger and bigger. Like we started off with like a cup of water and some fruit and cookies. We halfway through, we was at a banquet for lunch. Like it was just nuts. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. We left with 3 offers from 3 major publishers for multiple books, right? And by the end of that month, we had 14 offers, right? No, 14 offers from different publishers, right? For multiple book deals. We were spoiled for choice. Neither of us had a history of any success behind us in this industry. We've never made any books. No one knows if I can even make a book because I'll be honest with you, I couldn't make a book at the time. I just conned my way into this in terms of even the art style that I used when I illustrated Rocket. It was very much me experimenting with a children's booky style. I
Yeah.
didn't think that if they pick this up, I'm going to have to commit to this style and I'm going to have to learn how to work in this style. So when they picked it up, I was in for a shock. Um, and they did pick it up. We went with Penguin Random House. They made us a really good offer, and we have a cracking team there. I've done some incredible things with them in the meantime. We signed our book deal, and then when it became a career proper, because I don't think one book deal makes a career, but when it became a career proper was in 2018 February when my inbox went nuts. Now we took one book deal in 2017, right? So out of 14 offers, we took one. That left 13 other publishers that wanted to work with me. So when we got to 2018, they all were shooting their shot. And my inbox was nuts, like absolutely nuts. And I took on about 3 or 4 different deals at the time. And that is when I felt like I had a career proper. Bearing in mind, through all of this, I was still working at the gym. And the gym, I was only working one day at the gym. So the gym I worked at closed down properly in 2018 February, which kind of forced me to now
Yeah.
have to fully step out into illustration with no safety net and go for a career. And that is how I got here in a very, very large nutshell. That's like 15 minutes to answer the question that you asked me.
Oh, that was great. You just like took me into your world, which was fantastic to hear. I'm curious, what do you think it was that was the it factor when you analyze it looking back that you think really um pushed your artwork to be the right thing at the
So
right time at the
So
right
that's a
moment?
fantastic question because I was going to go into it, but I thought I was talking too much already. But that's a fantastic question. Um, the it factor for me, I didn't know what it was at the time. I was overwhelmed by the
Yeah,
response, if I'm going to be honest. But having sat still and looked at the industry and looked at the state of the industry, and now I'm not sure how aware you are of my background, but since coming into the industry, I've done a lot to champion diversity and try and get more people like myself through the door. So, and the reason why is because at the time when we came in at the right time. Like
sure.
if I
Yeah.
had come into this industry 10 years before, I wouldn't be enjoying the success I'm enjoying now. It was the perfect time. at the time, the CLP, the Center for Learning in Primary Education, they had released a report that they commissioned to look into the state of diversity in the industry.
Mm,
And it was shocking, absolutely shocking. Something like below 1% of people creating children's literature in publishing in the UK were from diverse backgrounds, were Black. Like, it was crazy. Like, and then it was like 0 point something percent of them were Black illustrators when it came to the illustrators. So
yeah.
technically, one person really, like one person, one person,
Yeah.
one person. And he had been in the industry for 30 plus years at the time.
Yeah.
And people were involving my name in the conversation, even though I was unpublished. So that kind of forced me into the conversation. And one thing that I did was I took control of how I entered the conversation.
Yeah.
And through all of that stuff, I started to realize why we had the response that we had, in answer to your question. And the reason was because we were every, pardon the expression, but we were every publisher's like fantasy. I was going to say another word there, another type of dream, but we were their dream. Let's just put it that way. And basically, we were their non-dry dream. Make what you will of that. And basically, what it was that you had two Black guys,
Yeah.
right? And Black men were underrepresented. So two
Mm,
Black men.
yeah.
One's an author, one's an illustrator. I'm African. We ticked so many boxes. And then on top of that as well, it's a Black girl. There's STEM. She's her love of space is STEM, is scientific. It's got
Yeah. Yeah.
all those elements to it. And also the drawings were good as well, right? So all of those boxes were just automatically ticked, right? And then how it became even more crazy was because I made the conscious decision to be part of the conversations that were happening at the
Mm,
time. So a lot of publishers needed to have somebody on their books that was doing these things. And here I am. But even saying that, one thing I pride myself on is I'm good at passing the mic. Like, I hate the sound of my own voice being the constant. So like, I'm just good at passing the mic. What I'll do is I'll set it up so that someone else can step in and
sure.
talk and their voice be heard. And that's something that I'm good at doing. So yeah.
Wow. Well, all of my questions are like churning.
Hit me with them, man. We've got time. Hit me with them.
uh yeah, so let's dig into that point right now about the place of diversity in children's book and the need for it. What do you think can be done in the industry right now to facilitate more diverse creatives to become a part of not only the conversation but also work with publishers? Because I find, even though for you at that time maybe it was the right time, right moment, there are still lots of, I think, young illustrators, diverse illustrators trying to get in the industry, but finding it hard. They're hitting a publishing wall, as it were, because there are a lot of gatekeepers. Um, what would your thought process be in how do we cut down the barriers to entry?
So I'm going to say something that I think might be a little bit controversial.
Sure.
Having worked with illustrators, aspiring illustrators, people who say they want to get into the industry, I noticed that there is a problem on both sides. There's a
Mm,
problem with the industry in that there are these gatekeepers that you talk about, but I'm seeing the efforts being made to take that down. I'm seeing loads of different schemes and things pop up, but the biggest problem that I find is that for so long, people from diverse backgrounds have been excluded from the whole process, the whole experience. They've been excluded for so long that they've only ever had an outside view. So the outside view is a bit unrealistic, you know. Um, Things happen as an oversimplification
mm,
of the work that we do as illustrators, right? People
yeah.
who say they want to be illustrators, who say they want to be children's book illustrators, for example, they don't understand the craft. Like, they don't understand the craft. They oversimplify the craft. So when you see the level of work that they're bringing forward, it's really lacking. in a lot of
Mm.
ways. Like they stuck to their comfort zones. And I'm self-taught, right? Like I did all those things. I studied those courses, but none of them were illustration. So
Yeah.
to be an illustrator, I was self-taught. So I had to literally cobble together an education in illustration myself. Now, I was privileged because I did graphic design, and in graphic design, I learned what it is to dissect and break down imagery, but I didn't
Mm.
learn the craft of illustration. I had to learn that myself. Do you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think my curiosity, my passion for it, my thirst for knowledge when it came to it is what propelled me forward. And I don't think people are curious enough. I don't think, because like I get asked these questions sometimes and I'm like, how do you not know the answer to that? Like, instead of asking me the question, you should be doing the research. Because one of the things for
Mm.
me is, right, I did ask other illustrators for questions, but there's a way that I ask. There's a difference between asking them to provide me with an answer and asking them to validate an answer that I already found. Do you get what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
difference because asking them to provide you with an answer, your answers are going to be your answers. They work for you, you
Yeah.
know? That's the thing about illustration. They work for you. So if I'm providing you with an answer, I'm providing you an answer that works for me, that works for my journey that I went on. Instead of that, what you should be doing is you should be doing your research. You should be finding out about different people's experiences. And from the lessons you're learning, cobble together your own. That's how I did it, and that's not the only way to do it.
Mm.
But for me, that was the best way because it kept me open. It kept me constantly thinking about how to push my craft forward, right? And I had done all of this legwork. So when I did come into the industry, it was like I'd always been here. Like I've only been here for 4 years. Remember the timeline I was giving you just now.
Yeah. Yeah.
2018 was the year that I got all the book deals and stuff. I was published in 2019, and that's 4 years, right? But prior to that, I had an education that I'd given myself in children's literature. I read children's picture books. I dissected children's picture books to learn how to draw, like in the children's in a more child friendly style, if you will. And
Yeah.
what I find with a lot of illustrators that say they want to do this thing, they haven't done that. Like I
Mm.
have a massive library of children's books.
Yeah.
Like I'm on the bus, I'm reading children's picture books. That's how invested I am. You know, there's this expectation that the industry is going to treat you a certain way. So they come in with that expectation, but I didn't, because the industry doesn't owe you any.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. As
Oh,
much as we say
100%.
we want, right, as much as we say we want more diversity in the industry, we want all of that stuff. We we have to be that. Does that make any sense? The industry isn't going
Oh,
to do it
yeah.
for you. You have to be that. Like what? Okay, we want more diversity, but how are you being diverse? How is your work diverse? You know what I'm saying? Like you can't say you want more diversity and you only want it because you're black or because you're brown or because you're queer.
Yeah.
Like how is your work? How is the stories that you're telling? How are they diverse? How are they? Do you know what I mean? All those
Yeah. Yeah.
things. So like I see the issues on both sides. In terms of the industry, I'm an advocate for what I call grassroots work, right? And grassroots work is something that I think can be constantly done and maintained in the industry as part of any publisher's day to day, if you will, right? So what I tend to see publishers do is they tend to have this approach where they want to be the one publisher that has the solution to solve all the problems when it comes to diversity. So they'll put on like a scheme, a prize,
Yeah.
something like that. And
Yeah.
I've always said to publishers, the only way you can solve this is if you're all saying the same thing and you're all working together when it comes to diversity,
Mm.
right? But they don't like to do that. Occasionally, they might work together through someone else or through another entity,
Yeah.
but they don't like to work together, period, right?
Mm.
And I get it. It's about money. I get it,
Competition. Yeah.
right? Money, competition, I get it, right? But that's the only way. And then there are grassroots things that I've done over the last few years that are easily implemented by publishers. One example was I was the Book Trust author, illustrator in residence in 2022, last year. And as part of my 6-month residency, I had a writer's clinic, right? And what I did was I would donate every 2 weeks, I would have a writers clinic, which would be myself and an author or illustrator who would donate their time. And we'd spend like a Friday and a Saturday we did 2 sessions every 2 weeks. We'd have a Friday and a Saturday in the evening, and for 2 hours we would sit with a group of 5 aspiring authors, and we would basically go through either a whole picture book with them that they've got, one of their picture books, or a chapter from a middle grade book, if that's what they're submitting. And we'd go through it. They would read it to the whole group. I would give my feedback. My guests would give their feedback, and then the group would give feedback as well, right? And this is 2 hours or so, Saturday and Friday, for 6 months, fortnightly. This would happen, right? And the results were amazing. Not only were we able to give feedback to people, give them a look behind the veil, a bit of transparency about how the industry functions, we were also able to bring people together, because what we do is a lonely thing. You work on your own, I work on my own. Like, we were able to introduce people to each other, and if they kept that connection, it could lead to groups, small little pockets of groups being formed, and this is something that I think publishers who claim they want more diversity in the industry could easily implement as part of their publishing house's structure. It's not going to cost them that much, and you get to have a one-to-one relationship with the talent. You get to build the talent
and spot it early.
And spot it early and invest in it, and
invest
in it and build it and all those freaking beautiful things. But they don't want to do that. They want you to arrive ready. And that's the problem. And that problem, that key thing on both sides is a problem. People arrive thinking they are ready, and publishers want you to arrive ready. Both, it's two sides of the same, but
No, I 100% agree with a lot of what you're saying, especially the fact that I don't think enough of us put in the work, be disciplined enough to be ready when the opportunities come knocking. So many times I've sent on these, like, here's an application, and they don't send in their stuff because they haven't prepared and they haven't put in the work to actually be there. And I'm all for diversity, but I'm also all for the highest caliber of illustrator,
quality of work, right?
Or author,
like, quality of work, because your work has to reflect that you are about this thing, because it doesn't get easier when you get through the door, right?
And it takes away from everyone else as well who has put in the work. If you drop the standard of the work, then it drops everybody's view of diverse creators, thinking they're only through the door because
not because they're good storytellers, but because it's a diversity scheme. And I'm not gonna lie, one thing I'll tell you is that fear of that has stuck with me. Do you know how I justify? And this is a deep thing for me to say, but how I validate myself when it comes to that, thinking to myself, am I only here because I'm me, because I'm black? How I validate it is that my audience, who are the kids that read the books, they do not know what the hell I look like. They know nothing. They love the books. And that's it. That's literally, I'm not gonna lie to you, that's the only reason I'm still here. Because the kids love the books. Because the way the industry does play up to me being black quite a lot, right? Asking me to come and chair this, be at this event, be at that. I see it. But I also know that my voice is needed in those spaces, right? But what keeps me from chucking it all in and just saying, screw this, I'm just going to go off and draw what I want, is the kids love the books, and kids don't know what I look like. I could be sitting there, and I've been sitting on the bus, kids like reading a well-read copy of Look Up. It's battered, but I'm like, oh, like, and the kid, I'm sitting there just looking, it's weird. Like, parents be like, are you looking at my kid? But I'm just sitting there, like, just overjoyed that this kid is reading my book, and they don't know who's me. I've had like family friends, like, who have walked in and the kid's holding a copy of my book, and they didn't know, friends of friends, they didn't know that it was me, and the kids just loves this book. And I get so much feedback from parents telling me how much the kids love the book, and that is what keeps me here. Because left to me, if it wasn't for that, like the politics and the crap that I see in the industry, I would have just left a long time ago. I would have packed it in. After about 3 books, I would have been like, nope, not doing this anymore.
I think that raises another really important point, is knowing the purpose behind why you want to be where you are, because I think that that impact is what really keeps you in the industry past the storms that you might face along the way. It's knowing that, hey, I am going to be making an impact in a kid's life in a way they will be able to see themselves in these books. They
Mm.
will be able to relate to these stories that are culturally relevant for them,
Mm.
and for yourself. So I think that's so important.
No, it is 100%. It's massively important. Even just the visibility of me in certain spaces, because I didn't have a me when I was coming up, you know. I
Yeah,
didn't have anybody that came to visit my school that said, "Oh, hey, I'm an
yeah,
illustrator and
yeah,
looks like me." Like I'll go into schools, kids be like, "Huh? He looks like my brother. He looks like my uncle." I look like people they know. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I look like people in their family, and in some cases I am them. Like I've been to my goddaughter's schools, and like
yeah.
I know I look like someone they know. Do you know what I mean? I look like Joe Average. Whereas when we used to have people come into school to talk to us, I don't know if you had this experience, but they never ever looked like us,
Yeah,
ever. And when they did, it was like it was odd, and they weren't really doing something that we wanted to do either. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I think we had somebody come in, and I think I can't remember like what it was. They were a scientist of some kind, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the wrong person. I'm not a scientist. I'm not interested in that at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
Like, I mean, it was nice, but
Mm,
I don't remember it that much. I just remember it vaguely, you know.
mm,
Whereas having me come into your school, you probably won't forget that in a hurry, you know.
mm.
So yeah.
The other thing I want to discuss with you, because I think so much of what we do is also going to have an impact in our social presence and building a personal brand around yourself. I mean, when you were telling me your story, you said you were actively doing that through the the shows you were creating for yourself, building an audience. Uh, Tell me a little bit about like the importance of building an audience. How should an aspiring creator go about it for themselves, and what sort of impact it has in the long term for yourself?
Okay, I'm going to answer this backwards. So
Yeah,
the impact it has is that people are invested in my journey.
yeah,
Like, and you know, I love that. I'm so grateful for that. People are invested in my journey. How to do it? I'm probably the worst person to ask because I think my approach is quite chaotic.
yeah,
Um, I say the best thing to do, and this guarantees that you will enjoy it, and you're not just pandering to people, is to lean into your own self-indulgence. Like draw what you
yeah,
like draw what you like and draw it well, and I guarantee you your audience will find you. Like I do things for me personally, I have a joy for seeing other people's translation of my work. Like I really love, I've had like people make toys. I did a draw this in your style with Rocket, and like people were sending me some of my favorite artists took a stab at drawing a character I designed. That
yeah,
blew my mind. And then I did like what I do. I had toys, I had stop motion puppets made of her. I've had sculpts made of certain drawings I've done. You know, I'm gonna get plushies made. Procreate a release and Procreate Dream. I'm going to start animating some of my characters. There's so many different things that you can do to explore your own work in different ways.
yeah,
And that does a wonderful thing. That for me, it built connections with people. You know, like I've got a friend who makes toys now. I've got a friend who does 3D sculpting now. I pay them. They didn't do it
yeah,
for free. I absolutely paid them because
yeah.
I believe in that. But also now we've collaborated successfully together, you know? And I
Mm,
think without collaboration, my career would not be what it is. It really wouldn't be what it is. And that way as well, working with those people, a few things happened. It opened my work to their audience and vice versa, you
mm,
know? Um, art doesn't exist in a vacuum.
yeah,
Realizing that it will really, really open you up, you know. And I'm curious. I've always been curious. I think curiosity is the thing that's the driving force. Now, when it comes to branding and
mm,
making it all tight and stuff, I am still working on that. Like the most I did was have an online shop, and I made sure that there were prints available. So, like as
yeah,
a children's book illustrator, I made sure that the experience that people have with the stories that I make goes beyond just the book. So
Mm,
if you really like lookup, you can buy prints, you can buy badges, you can buy stickers of Rocket, you know, and I'm working on so many different little things that people are going to be able to get to enhance their experience of the story beyond the book, you know, and
yeah.
that's a form of branding as
Mm,
well. And the only reason why I say I might not be the best person to ask is because I've seen some people execute this to a crazy level of proficiency. Like they've got the store, the banners, they've got the tape, the packaging. I don't have any of that stuff. I just plop it in an envelope and send it out to whoever's ordered it.
yeah.
But it's still early days for me. And when I
Mm,
get to a certain spot, like I think I'm gonna really fine tune it. And I think even at these early kind of stages, the things that I'm doing, I'm trying different things, trying, you know, what I don't want, if I'll be honest, what I'm not trying to do, what I would actually advise illustrators to do, which is not what I'm trying to do. It's a bit controversial that way, but I don't want to have I don't want to become this commercial entity that has like, you know, I sell prints and toys and all that stuff. I don't want to become a shop like that.
yeah, yeah.
Not right now, anyway, right? Because there's still so much, I still have a lot of work to do in terms of book work and publishing and all the rest of it. So for me, I still have a lot to learn in that lane. I still want to hone my craft as a storyteller. It won't be until I have like a mega successful, like J.K. Rowling level book that I'm going to now sit down for a bit because I've earned that time and I'm going to
Yeah.
invest in creating branding and creating my store. And to be honest with you, the reason I say I'm gonna do it like that is because I think that if I do have a mega successful series in terms of a book that I've written and illustrated myself, I think it's going to be easier for me to take that because it's entirely my property and translate it into merch.
Yeah.
And that's the plan, and that's coming soon. I've you know my next sort of thing is that like so far I've worked with loads of illustrators. I've written books for other people to illustrate, and I've also illustrated tons of books for people who other people have written. Now,
Yeah.
this stage of my career is working as an author illustrator on my own books. And
Mm,
that's the stage that you're going to see a shift in how I do the branding and marketing and all of those things. You know, I've got tons of ideas for how I'm going to approach it. But the reason I can do it that way now is because the property is all entirely mine. I split everything else so far with other people. So I have to take them into
yeah.
consideration when I'm creating things. But the next stage, this is going to be an interesting experiment for me in terms of creating a world around the world I'm creating on the page. So
Mm.
yeah,
I wanted to like go back a little and dig into something that you said, which was about collaboration and how
yeah,
it's such an important part of your actually of this industry,
journey.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you can't do anything in the children's book world without really collaborating because there's so many layers of it. And for yourself, what do you think has allowed you to have success with collaboration? What are some things that people should take into consideration that ensure that it is a smooth working relationship and that everybody comes out of it happy and empowered by the collaboration?
One of the key things I'll say is you need to have a realistic expectation of what you want out of the collaboration because I never want anyone to work for me. I want people to work with me.
Yeah.
Anyone I approach them as a fan first. I have to love what you do.
Mm,
Like, and if I love what you do, I have a lot of respect for it and for you. And that translates in how I work with you. And I have to see that there has to be trust on both sides, right? So, and I've been so fortunate to have the people that I work with trust me, but then that's also because I don't just expect the trust to be blind. I am, I have had to be good at articulating my expectations, like
yeah.
really articulating them so that no one's confused about what's needed. And if you don't understand, I'll go the extra mile to explain it to you. Like I've worked on the book Hey You. I wrote that book, and it was illustrated by a team of illustrators, 19 in total. A few of them were friends, and the vast majority of them were people that I had never really spoken to or knew. But the journey to find those artists began very early on in my career in 2018. I put a tweet out trying to find other Black illustrators in the UK. And that's when I started to collate a list of people whose work I'd gotten to see, gotten to know, gotten intimate with, if you will, over the years. And when the opportunity came, so 2018, I made the list. 2020 is when the opportunity came to make the book. And
Yeah.
I referred back to my list that I'd been making and the people whose work I'd seen and, gotten to know them and spoke to them and saw their trajectory and saw their passion that they were bringing. It was really easy because I had been stoking that fire for a bit for me to now tap into it, And as a result, the book happened and the book was a huge, huge success. Then fast forward to 2021, I was working on a book called Joyful Joyful, which is an anthology of 40 talents, 20 authors, 20 illustrators, right? From the Black diaspora. And again, I had a lot of help with that from the editor, Helen. She was brilliant, but I curated the book. And again, it was working as a fan. This time, the idea was it was a little bit more complicated because I had to get people who hadn't necessarily worked in children's publishing to work in children's publishing. So there were some illustrators who'd never done anything for children and they didn't know how to visualize their style as a children's book style, right?
Yeah.
So they had to have trust in me that they understood the vision, why I'm asking them to participate in this project. And then also it required them to trust me as an art director. And they were open to that as well, which was fantastic. And then we had authors who hadn't written anything for children's before, but they were quite well known in the adult writing sphere. So again, they had to trust us to edit them so that their work would be accessible for children. So it was a huge experiment in trust, if you will, and it really, really paid off. I'm a fan first. That's the thing I'm going to say about collaboration. Like I want to collaborate with people. I'm a fan of your work. If I'm not a fan of your work, it's not going to happen. Like I'm a fan of your work. Like, so I always let that passion, that love I have as a fan, I let that lead when it comes to picking who I want to collaborate with. And it's worked amazingly well so far, and what else? Like, just again, curiosity leads it. A collaboration for me isn't just two people necessarily working together in a traditional sense, like you write and I illustrate, for example. It can take form it can take shape in so many different forms. And another one for me that I do is like I do these characters sometimes and I have no idea what I'm going to do with them next. So I reach out to people who I know like are doing something really cool, like a 3D artist or a toy maker, and I'd be like, do you want to have a crack at bringing these drawings of mine to life? How much do you charge? And collaboration, again, all these collaborations, every single one of them, people get paid. I do not feel comfortable to approach somebody unless we've both sat down and come up with a project together. I don't feel comfortable approaching somebody who's a professional and asking them to do work on an idea that I've had without any mention of paying them. And that's something that people do to me a lot. Like it really, really jars me. I'm sure you get the same thing. People come into your inbox, oh my God, your work is amazing. I've got this idea. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Where's the money? Where's the money? Because while I'm working on your idea for free, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. So what's going on? So that's another thing. That's the biggest thing I'd say. If you know you want to collaborate with somebody, have the financial means to do so. Don't approach them and sell them your idea because it's your idea. Like it's your idea. It's not theirs. So don't approach them and sell them your idea as a means of collaboration, because then what you're really doing is you're telling them what they should be doing with their work. And that's not cool.
True. Very true. As we bring the interview to a close, what would be one piece of advice you would give the next generation of young creators?
I hate this question, by the way. I really, really hate this question because there's so many things to say, but like, I'm going to say one thing. Be prepared to be a student forever. Like that's the one thing that a lot of people don't do. They think they're going to reach mastery. You don't reach mastery. You just don't. And the sooner you give up on trying to reach mastery, I think the sooner you come to terms with a lot of things in the craft that we're doing, and the sooner you start to really enjoy trying different things, because you're not looking for mastery, you're looking for the experience, you're looking for whatever you might learn from it. There's a thing that people say all the time. They're like, how do I find my style? How do I find my style? You've heard that question a million times,
So
right? Like, how do
many.
I find? And
Yeah.
I used to say, I used to be in search of a style.
Yeah.
I think it's not as complex as people make it out to be the answer, right? So, like,
Yeah.
there are some of us who are freaking amazing at stylizing their work, and you can see their style, and they grow their style, and they flesh it out, and you can see it over their career. And for those of us who aren't that way inclined, who still want to find a style, I think the best thing to do is just to constantly try different things and new things,
Mm,
but don't just try in a unfocused manner. Don't do that, because then you're just going to end up not learning anything, because you're trying so many different things. You're taking leaps and bounds in totally opposite directions. Try in a focused manner, try in a linear manner. Create something and build on something. Try and expand your style in a manner that makes sense. And what you'll find is that you'll have a body of work that won't look the same,
mm,
right? But there'll be elements of your body of work that are signatures of
yeah.
you, right? It's
Yeah.
far easier to look back over a body of work and see a style than it is to try and predict a style going forward. It's far easier, you know.
Yeah.
If you're trying to predict a style going forward, how are you doing? Like, how? Please tell me. If you have that secret, tell me, because to me, that's the quickest way to drive yourself crazy.
Yeah. I
Like, you're
think
trying to
I.
predict the style.
Yeah. I think it's a process of iteration and also tapping into your own personality because your flavor, your taste is going to change as you grow, and so your style needs to evolve with you. And I think that's an impact, like really essential part of developing your style.
Yeah,
Iteration,
because what you don't
iteration,
want to do,
iteration.
yeah, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to develop a style and then you stagnate, and
Yeah.
then your style isn't applicable to different things. Because one thing I've learned is that each project requires its own style. Like, it requires its own style. It requires something different from me, So it's not going to look the same. And now I take great pride in working on projects that allow me to experiment and try a
Mm,
different style. Like, and what I'm going to hopefully end up with is a body of work that has different styles for different types of storytelling, which I can tap into. So you want to become a self-referential kind of artist. Like,
mm,
you can reference, you've got so many different things that you've tried and done. You want to be able to reference them for things, that this style works and you can do this style, that this works and you can do this style. That's, to me, that's a versatile artist. And that makes for a much more, I think, interesting career,
mm.
like, than having a career where your work just looks the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think your other point, the pursuit of excellence is something we should all aspire for because, you know, uh, we might not get mastery, but if you're
Mm.
choosing to be or trying to be a little bit better every day,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
going to
yeah,
be
yeah, 100%.
continue to grow. That
Yeah,
idea of
100%. Like,
a daily school, like never coming to the place where you feel like you can't learn anything
but the
because
thing is,
yeah,
if you come to that place, it's because it's a bad thing. It's not a
yeah,
good thing.
yes, yeah,
Mastery is not a good thing. Like, it, because you don't achieve mastery. That's not actual mastery. Like, imagine getting to a place where you feel like there's nothing you can be taught or you can learn. So what's the
mm,
point? What do
yeah.
we do now? Like, we just sit there, like, patting ourselves on the back. No.
Like they say, it's more about the journey than the destination. So it's the
Mm,
idea of pursuing excellence rather than
mm.
um
And the reason I say it the way I say it as
yeah.
well is because I think it's important to reframe it as well.
Mm,
Because sometimes, even in that, even people knowing that the journey is important and the destination isn't the be all and end all, I think sometimes, how people define excellence, it can become toxic,
right.
because then it gives way, and I'm talking about myself in this. It gives way to the belief that your work is never good enough. So you have to find somewhere in there to be kind enough to yourself
Mm,
to understand where you are at each stage. Like, so for me, I think I tell myself when I get down on myself about my work, I always remind myself, I've only been doing this for 4 years. I've only been making books for this amount of time. A good thing I did when I was coming up was I read mini auto bios for certain artists, Ronald Searle and Quentin Blake, and it really puts stuff into perspective for me. These gentlemen who are two of the greatest illustrators to ever do this, they didn't really start working properly until they were in their mid-30s, right? And in this day and age, we're expected to have it all cracked out and figured out by the time we're in that, mid-30s. I didn't start working. My first picture book came out. I'm 40 now, so my first picture book came out when I was 36. I didn't start working in the industry till I was 35. And there is a part of me when I started that was like, oh, what would it have been like if I'm 10 years too late, blah, blah, all that stuff, right? And then I sat back one day and I was like, you know what? If you came into this industry 10 years ago, the state of the industry would have had you just like quitting. I would have quit, So everything happens when it's supposed to happen. And I think it's really, really important to be kind to yourself in that respect and acknowledge where you are and where you want to be and find a sweet spot in the middle to just sit and appreciate where you are, because you're making art for a living. Do you know what I mean? You're making art for a living, or you have the desire to make art for a living. Those are good things, and comparison, it will rob you of joy, man. It will rob you of joy.
Yeah, I have this saying, comparison is the enemy of creativity.
Yeah, it's a thief of joy.
Yeah.
It's the thief of joy. It will like rob you of joy. Like you can't be happy if you're constantly comparing yourself to this, that, and expectations and
And the other thing I think is, I don't know about you, but for myself, I have the practice of reflect, reassess, reboot. So you 100%. Reflect on the artwork that you've done, whatever you've done, because it's so easy to get caught up in the moment and think, oh, I'm not doing so great right now, or I'm not feeling it right now, and then forget the whole year's worth of great work that you've done. And so that
forget that there are years ahead.
Yeah.
That's the part, because like it really stops you from thinking, like, because I've been through the loop, if you will. Like my first picture book put me in therapy, man. Like I was like, oh my god, I'm the worst artist to ever do this. Like I'm terrible. Like I could be really hard on myself, and I had to be kinder to myself. Do you know what I mean? I had to be kind to myself, and then I had to understand that this is a journey. This is supposed to be a career that's going to run me another like 30 years or so before I retire or whatever. Or I might never retire. This might be a lifelong thing. Like, so I just had to remember that. Do you know what I mean? Like I've lived, knock on wood, I'll make it to 80 plus, but I've lived half my life. Do you know what I mean? So like there's a whole other 40 years to do. Like, why am I beating myself up now? Do you know what I mean? So it's like really understanding that. And a struggle that I find people that are 25 and below, mostly, I've encountered this. They have an inability to see beyond where they are, where they currently are. And it is, a lot of it is due to, not to get too political, a lot of it is due to the times that we live in. But I think it's really important to build that in yourself, that ability to see beyond where you are right now, So yeah.
And the last question I like to ask all my guests is, what does the word fruitful mean to you?
The word fruitful means to have plenty. It means how I take it, like it's nuts, it's crazy you're asking me this question, because I was having this conversation this morning with somebody, but using a different word. The word I was using is abundance, right? I live my life in abundance. I try really, really hard to live my life with an abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset, right? And fruitful aligns with that, because the way that I look at it is, I'm never going to hold on to anything too tight, because I can always make more. So in that respect, my life is fruitful. I am fruitful because I live in abundance. Like I live a life of abundance, whether it's, I'll give you what I have because I'll just go and make another one. Do you know what I mean? If you take something from me, I'm not going to lose my sleep over it because I can make another one. And again, maybe there's an undercurrent of privilege there, but even when I didn't have anything, I was always like that. Because my belief is, if I hold on to anything too tightly, especially anything superficial, if I hold on to it too tightly, it's not going to serve me. It's not. So yeah, I'm fruitful in that respect, and I think that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah, that was beautifully put. Thank you, thank you. Hey, thank you all for listening to this episode of The Fruitful Life. I hope you walk away with some nuggets of wisdom. And if you did, please do leave me do me a favor and leave me a rating and a comment to let me know what you think of the show. Also, consider telling a friend who might like it. As always, be true, be you, stay fruitful.